Welcome everybody to AI for the Average Joe, season 4, episode 8. We've been very busy with the boys, interviewing all the boys recently, which is fantastic. We like to have a good gender mix on Average Joe, but we've had quite a lot of male views, which is nice because actually we tend to have a lot of female views. So I'm excited for today's conversation. I think today's guest will bring a really holistic, people-focused view on where we're going to go in the AI conversation and what that means for us, very much as people, as well as using AI in the workplace. We know there's so many more opportunities we could be partnering with this technology with, and I think we're going to be exploring some of that today. Today's guest is Andy Lancaster. Morning, Andy. How are you?
Hi, Erica, and hi, Hayley. Yeah, doing really well, and it's absolutely brilliant. Thanks for the opportunity to come and share some thoughts on here. It's a real privilege.
Thank you so much for spending the time. And, obviously you and I kind of, you were very kind to be one of the authors of one of the forwards for my book. And we've known each other for a wee while now and come from things from very different places, but often end up in a similar conclusion, I think, don't we? So I'm really
Yeah.
interested to hear how that's going to go in today's episode as well. So Andy, most people will know you, but tell us a little bit about yourself, and also how did you get into AI, and what was your kind of career history, and what's brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I have some random parts to my career. In fact, I've got the CV you probably wouldn't want to have because it's just it's been all over the place. So let me start. So I initially trained as I did a design degree, and my main electives were in furniture making and silversmithing. So, and with that, I did teaching as well. So my initial roles of I thought I was going to become a school teacher, teaching design, or a college college lecturer. But very quickly, I moved from that into technologies in the early days. So I was on working for a company doing computer aided design in the early days. So I got into technologies and learning and design. So I guess if you said what am I guess I'm an interface of design, learning, and technology. That's where my career has sat, and I've now had 35 years in mainly in organizational learning, written a couple of books, driving performance through learning and organizational learning communities. But I think in the context of this conversation, whilst people might know me as a learning and development board, I want to very much think about those interfaces of yeah, holistically how AI supports me and I guess how it can support us.
Yeah, love that. And I think the conversation absolutely needs, like, when I say conversation, I mean the societal conversation, right? Really needs to start thinking about what does it mean for us as people and society, as opposed to efficiencies and productivity and, displacements and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. What what is it about your background? You talked about, silversmithing, design, working with technology. What is it that's made you kind of think, actually, this is where the conversation around people and AI needs to go now? And what was your learning and reflections on that?
Yeah, no, and I think this is a really important thing because sometimes there is no bandwagon we won't jump on. I mean, that's the reality, isn't it? We don't want to be left out. But I had a real challenge when I was at Learning Technologies Exhibition Conference for maybe those outside the UK. This is a big event in the UK. Everybody was saying we've got an AI agent. Everybody was saying that. And for me, if I take my silversmithing background, that's like saying I've got a planishing hammer. Now, a planishing hammer is what you use to put those wonderful little dents on wonderful pieces of silver work you're doing. This is a tool for me. This is what it is. It is no more than a tool. I know it's a very powerful tool. So for me, it's not saying we have an AI agent. It's just saying what are we trying to use this for? So for me, when I produced, I made some silver napkin rings for my daughter's wedding.
Oh,
That's the output.
yeah.
I don't say have a look at the wonderful planishing hammer I used it. No, it's about the thing you've done with it. So I think for me, there's too much talk about the technology, and not enough that this is a tool, as we'll unpack here, which is so powerful for so many aspects of life. But it's the outputs which really interest me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
love that. And we talk a lot about accountability of output and things. And people almost in organizations are seeing that as a real light bulb moment when they realize that they're accountable for what they do with it. And I think it links into what you're saying there, Andy. The output is still ours. What we decide to put forward, how we decide to use it, what we share, and we're simply using AI as a tool to get there. So I think that's a
Mm.
real mindset piece, actually. I think in terms of how people see it.
And
Mm.
I think we're all prone to cognitive bias as we are. So for me, I'm trying to be objective around this, but there are, in my view, many who have confirmation bias big time going on here. Whenever AI is there, it just fulfills what we all, what we want to do with AI. So I think a dose of skepticism is really important with this, just the same as any tool you're using. And I've been around technology, so I was involved with computer design and computer rendering back in the 80s and 90s. Then it was a very different gig from what it is now. So I look back at Monsters Inc. If you look at Pixar movies and you watch Sully's Hair movie, oh
Yeah.
goodness, I was kind of around at that time. But you now look at the complexity and the possibilities of it. So I can only assume we're at the very earliest stages of AI. So again, let's not
Mm.
get hooked up. Let's look at the outputs, what we're trying to achieve here, and how this wonderful technology can help us do that.
Yeah, for sure. We seem to have lost the value conversation a little bit as well, right? What's the value of our work and our thinking and our relationships and our output or whatever that is? And how does AI enhance that and support that? Because certainly, if I'm somebody in an organization where the C-suite, the leadership haven't been clear about why they're bringing in AI, and I therefore fill in the gaps thinking, well, you're going to make me redundant, like I'm not going to be thinking about value. I'm going to be thinking about how do I pay my mortgage next month or what my next job is,
Yeah.
or, we're in so many different places when it comes to our perspective on AI. And a lot of that is because we've gone from 0 to 4 rather than 0, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Mm.
like we would do normally with technology. But the other thing is, I think leadership are struggling to kind of explicitly provide either that psychological safety or that message around what our intentions are here. Do you think that's keeping people stuck in that productivity, efficiency conversation? Is that a distraction, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think we know most technologies go through Gartner curves and it's going to solve everything. And then we tail off a little bit because suddenly we realize it's more complex than we thought and there's risk involved. But for senior leaders, for me, it still comes back to not jumping on the bandwagon. There's got to be a very good reason why we're doing this. And I think productivity is the one which I suppose frightens all of us to some degree because can the system be more productive than me? Yeah, probably on some things. But then what's really exciting me is, we know this is a Venn diagram. We've got the human, we've got the AI, and we've got the overlap. Where
Yeah,
the money shot for me is the overlap of how
yeah,
this helps humans to be brilliant. Now, if it takes away, if it can lift the heavy load on some of the processing work in the AI kind of bit, then that's cool. But that frees me up to be even more human and brilliant at what we're doing. And I think I know, Erica, we've talked about this many times. You look at skills for the future kind of research. You've got AI and big data and those things up there, but you've got skills like curiosity and lifelong learning. So for me, yeah, maybe senior leaders are panicking. You don't want to be left out, but you've still got to come back to what are we trying to do as a fundamental reason for using AI. And as I said, for me, it's been far, far more than just productivity.
Mm.
yeah,
I think some of this starts as
mm,
well, and I think what we're leaning into a little bit is that need to know the end in mind, like why you're using it and what when you first use the tool, what do I actually want to achieve at the end of it? And I'm finding the more people I speak to, that's actually a skill that's missing in general
Hmm.
prior to AI. You get going on a task, and as particularly quite methodical, logical people will just work through the task without really thinking about where it's going to take them. So a lot of these skills are maybe, or AI is just shining a light on some of the skills that maybe we haven't used very much or we haven't got better at. And curiosity and being creative and that stuff. Those are the things that people think AI is going to squash. The perception is those are the skills that are actually it's going to squash, and that's where it becomes within our power to actually
Mm.
build those skills and make more of
Yeah,
them. I'm finding it's allowing me to elevate more and think bigger, and
totally.
I've really struggled with that. That's always been something that I've not been able to do. I've gone into detail, so there's so much opportunity for people
Yeah.
to build their confidence in areas that they've felt that they couldn't do before, or they've had a fixed mindset on.
Well, I think Hayley, that's such an important point. But that for me encapsulates what I do as a learning and performance bod, because you have to start with the end case of what you're trying to solve. And I think we know, if I just take learning now, for those who are listening in who are learning people, we know that you start with the end in mind and you build towards that. So I think that's absolutely right. And I think that's where, so let me give you a classic example. Let's look at something. And I'm happy to be honest and vulnerable here. I'm suffering with arthritis in my hands and things like that. I'm of an age where that's happening. Just doing a Google search, you can get some AI kind of insights with that. But I stuck it through a search engine or through an AI engine, and even put some of the, I had some bloods done last week. I had no idea what some of the terminology was. This thing was spitting out brilliant questions, which even my GP and the nurse who took my blood were not asking me. So my end thing was, I want to understand, what am I possibly getting into here? And very quickly, this was providing the most brilliant route to say, this is what's likely to happen next. So I think we reverse engineer for me with AI, and that's the intelligent place to start that. And I think to Eric, to your point, I think maybe chief execs and seniors are coming the other end. We need to be using AI.
Yes.
There's this kind of imperative. Everybody else is using it. We need to be using it. Yeah, no, stop. What's the end point? Like my arthritis diagnosis, it really helped me. So that's the starting point. Maybe that's a great little seg there, isn't it? In terms of you start with a pain point. Literally, for me, it's starting literally with a pain point with these wonky fingers. But from the pain point, you're then leveraging AI in a really intentional way.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Andy, and I think you're right. Like, when I say to leaders or teams, AI isn't going to give you the competitive edge just because you've all got Microsoft, Copilot or Claude or whatever it is that you're going into agentic now. What's going to give you the competitive edge? And again, they struggle to answer that kind of question because they haven't done the thinking of the pain point or the problem we're looking to solve. And then that's still systems and business processes and workflows and use cases, let alone, if we think of it as a bit of a pie chart, that's probably a small segment of the pie chart. Whereas the human condition, whether that's supporting well-being, whether that's supporting counselling, therapists, I know this is a bit of a touchy subject for some of these areas right now. Coaching, for example. I know, Andy, you're doing some great work around those kind of more human-centered use cases to really support people's lives and health and personal examples, right?
Yeah, and you're right. I think there are always risks and challenges around this. But my take is, with the democratization of access to thinking and solutions, people are using this. So whether we like it or not, I think that's happening. And I'm a great one. One of my big passions is democratization of learning. We shouldn't just have some people have access to coaching. Now, let's say this really carefully, because I don't want to offend any coaches. I'm a qualified coach. Is there a need for the human interaction in coaching? Yes, I think that's really important. But if we were able to provide simple coaching access on fairly basic things for everybody, that's just got to be a brilliant thing. And a lot of I think a lot of this for me, Erica, sits around the knowledge base. I mean, with a closed GPT, with a brilliant knowledge base in there, you can do this stuff much better. So I think democratization is really important. And I'm guessing the system might be locked down to certain ages, but they're using it on their smartphone. They're doing it probably using their 5G. So So I think a few for me, which are kind. So let's say, okay, productivity is a clear area where lots of companies are looking at. But I think creativity is one which I'm leveraging it for, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So if I go back to, let's go back to my silversmithing. If you were a silversmith, you were probably part of a guild, which was a community where everybody was really passionate about this, and you shared that information. Now, in one sense, I think AI is providing me with a virtual guild. Around my creativity, because the information, we're in one sense we're connecting with other people, because this is kind of building. So I think you can get fantastic information around creativity. So the kind of things I'm using it for is to generate alternative perspectives. I
Yeah.
think it's just genius. Sometimes I just think, how have I been so blind spotted that I don't see, I haven't seen. It's always like you watch it scrolling through, and you think, oh my goodness. So I think it helps you to be more creative. I
Hmm.
think for me in book writing, I am an author. I did a really interesting podcast for the I'm Not a Robot series. I think there is something really powerful about writing. It is a therapeutic, powerful process. So I'm not into just shoving into AI, just say, write me a chapter. I go through
Yeah.
the hard slog of writing what my thinking is, but then you can test it and see what am I missing? And
Yeah.
are there other perspectives on this? So I think creativity is a hugely powerful one for me. And yeah, and I let's just draw breath there because I'd like to go a little bit into research as well because I'm using it
Yeah. Let's go.
massively
Let's do it. Yeah.
in research. But I think
Yeah.
let's take the book writing. I'm trying to veer a little away from just talking about particular products here because we're trying to be agnostic here. But I use consensus for my evidence-based research practice. Now, when I did my master's degree, this is how crazy it is. When I did my master's degree, I had to sit in a physical library at Brunel University and you would look at microfiches. God, this is showing how old I am. Some people,
Microfiche. Wow.
some people listening are not even going to know what a microfiche is. Okay, it was this little tiny kind of thing where all information was scanned on, and you looked in a reader or whatever. Or
Like
you had
newspapers and stuff like that,
yeah,
wasn't it? I remember
all,
scanning.
all
Yeah.
in there, yeah. And you'd have an interlibrary loan. How mad is this? So you'd find the book and it's not in your library, and you'd have to go and request it from some other library, and it'd take 2 or 3 weeks to get there. So now for me, this is just incredible. So I can go into AI and just put a hypothesis question in, and within seconds, it's gone through millions, literally millions of papers
Yeah.
and source them. And this is not dodgy stuff. This is not broken link stuff. This is genuine. So whereas I would have used EBSCO or a library or whatever, now this is coming up saying, Andy, these are the top 5 cited research reports
Yeah.
on well-being at work or whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
suddenly in terms of productivity, I might have something I'm writing on, but suddenly it opens up this massive vista of information in seconds. And if you
Yeah.
obviously pay for high level subscriptions for these, it then starts doing amazing analysis for you. So I think, yeah, so creativity and research, this is just supercharged me.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Supercharge is a great way to,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
great word to use that. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And I think where we are as people is sometimes it's our own mindset and lack of creative thinking that's holding us back here. And we tell ourselves the narrative that we're not very creative, or I'm only going to use AI for this, or I can't use it. I don't know how to use it. But actually, that's the problem that we have in life with anything, trying anything new, right? Or stretching out of our comfort zone. So once again, for me, AI is shining a light on how we see ourselves and the stories
yeah.
we tell ourselves and the narrative that we believe and that we don't believe. And that would be typically a coaching conversation, right? That we would have, or, with a line manager or something, we can have that conversation with AI now as well. So for me, it's like falling down the rabbit hole, this stuff. You start thinking
Yeah.
about it and the dominoes keep falling and falling and falling.
The interesting thing for me is, if I go back to design, so I learned good design principles when, even this is going back many, many years when I did my degree. So there's design principles. So I know design processes, processes for creative thinking.
Yeah.
So I think it helps to have those. So I mean, let's just throw one out there. One way to design is to design the worst example of the product you're trying to design. You come up with everything you wouldn't want the product to do. And it's a good fun exercise. You can have a right laugh about it. But then what you can do is you reverse that absolutely 180 degrees, and suddenly
Yep.
you've got a brilliant product spec. Now, when you know those kind of things, you could go into an AI age or an AI support system and actually say, give me the worst possible solutions for this
Yeah.
scenario. And it will do it brilliantly.
Yeah.
And then, but I think maybe this comes back. What we're actually talking about here is there probably needs to be some established thinking about
Yes.
how you access these technologies. So maybe the issue is not more AI. Maybe it's training us how to leverage the tools really well. And I know you guys are very passionate about that, but I think that's where for creativity and even for research, having done a master's degree in writing books, I know what the research process is. So yeah, so maybe we need to equip people more with how you do this stuff rather than just thinking about AI.
And I think we're learning people, right? So we're
Yeah.
actually used to challenging, pushing back, asking good questions, getting under the skin of things, peeling back the onion. That's what we do in our day to day. So for us, it feels a bit like second nature. Once that light bulb goes off, we
Mm,
think, oh, why am I not asking these questions or looking at it from this perspective or shining a light on this? And we have the skills to do that anyway, whether we're working with AI or with people. I think there's so many people out there, and this is where that productivity coaching creativity balance really comes in, because you've got people out there saying, plan me a summer holiday with 2 children, this type of resort, these, those people who are going, oh, it's brilliant, it gives me all these ideas. And then you've got people like us who are starting to see, well, that's okay, but actually it's not giving me anything creative or
value.
different or
Back
of
to
any real
value.
Yeah.
value. So it
Yeah.
looks great, it's giving me an itinerary, so productivity tick. What it's not giving me, though, is the challenge. Or have you thought about this? Have you considered
Yeah.
that? Because I'm not prompting in a way that's getting under the skin of my request. And
Mm,
I think that's the real win here. But it's you can't just kind of say, oh, if you get more creative, you'll get better output, because not everyone has the skills to be able
mm,
Yeah.
to do that, or know where to start with it, or what questions to ask.
Which is
mm.
where it comes back to my planishing hammer, which again, for those who've never done silversmithing, this is a wonderful little hammer which you put these wonderful, it's from the arts and crafts movement. You put it, unless you know what this is about, how to use it. I mean, I actually this sounded me, but I actually trained under someone who was a silversmith to the Queen at the time. So
Wow.
Ken, his name was. I won't say his surname. Ken was, and Ken actually. When I can remember being in the workshop, and this may not be appropriate now, but this is where we were. I was planishing, and Ken actually came and held my hands, and suddenly you got the rhythm. So there's a rhythm, it's and how you play. But I learned from a master on how to actually do it. So
Yeah.
so to your point, hey, the prompting question, you got to know from a master. You got to know what you're doing. Once that clicked, I could then do this. So maybe I think what's coming out of this conversation for me is there's probably a lot of foundational stuff we're not giving people before we let them loose on AI, and then they're getting slightly disastrous results. So I guess for me as a learning professional, I'm taking away already. This is some of the stuff we need to be looking at.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
both, excuse the hammer pun, hit the nail on
Mm.
the head. I
Nice,
just
nicely done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
hit the silver on the side, or
yeah,
whatever the terminology is. I think you're right. And when I go out spend time with clients, I'll do a bit of a pre-assessment. Where do you think you are with your different layers or your fragmented foundation? What you're using it for? It's always that foundational AI literacy piece, which scores low in reality, but from a self-scoring perspective, I think I'm much better. The old adage of, have, a group of people in the room and you ask them who's an above average driver, and pretty much half the group put their hand up, and statistically that's impossible. It's the
yeah,
same when we self-score with
yeah,
AI, because we don't know what good looks like. We don't know what
yeah.
good prompting looks like, and the value and the impact and the critical thinking and all the stuff.
Mm.
With a piece of silver, I guess the trained eye can pick that piece up. Ken could pick your work up and go,
Yeah,
I think that's brilliant. And it's brilliant because of this, this, and this. Whereas I'd pick it up and go, I think it's good, but I don't have that understanding of what good looks like. So I kind of see that playing out where we are with
yeah,
AI
yeah.
right now.
I think that's a good analogy, isn't it? The master, and if you go back to the guild thing, the master does this with consummate ease.
Yeah.
But when we're not skilled, it's clunky, isn't it? Literally clunky.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there is something of gaining a more and for me, often this is being in community. I know I've written a book around community. I think we learn
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
We
Brilliant.
learn better with others.
Yes.
Can I just pick up on well-being, because I
Yeah.
think this is an interesting one, and I think that we've got to be very careful on this. So yeah, I've worked in my career. I've worked in drugs rehab for a season, and I also worked in dementia care. So I understand where this is going, in terms of we've got to be very careful when we're giving therapeutic advice or medical advice, those kind of things. But I think in terms of the democratization of general well-being, this has been genius for me. Can I give you a really quick example, which is
Of
just an
course.
absolute,
Absolutely do, man.
this is, yeah. Again, I'm really happy to be vulnerable with it. Mum died just over a month ago, and she was quite old, and it was expected. But I'd been through 6 months, along with other family members, caring for mum, and it'd been quite tricky, at times. And I guess I've got a growing GPT because I'm interfacing in general around it.
Yeah.
So do you know, I was driving back um, after Mum had died, and I stopped off for a coffee, and I put in there, what advice would you give me based on the interactions we've had? And do you know what? It came up, it said this amazing thing. It said, if you cut a tree in half, where does this come from? If you cut a tree in half, you'll see the rings. Now, the wide rings are the easy seasons where there's plenty of water. It's very easy. The narrow rings are the really tough seasons when there isn't much water or there might be high winds. But the narrow rings give more structural integrity to the tree than the wide rings. And you've just been through a narrow ring season. Now,
Wow.
yeah, wow, where did that, I could have paid a lot of money for that, but sitting in a coffee shop, I just thought I've been through a thin ring season. But structurally, for my life, this difficult season is really powerful. Now, why would we not want to democratize that? Okay, a psychotherapist might say it's more complex than that, Andy, or whatever. But for me, in the moment, that was just genius.
You don't always need that complexity. You don't want the
No.
complexity. It's just, again, it gives you a tool to work with or something to pin your thoughts to, which I think people really value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Thanks
I
for
hear
sharing,
people,
Andy.
yeah, thank you for sharing,
No,
Andy.
no, it's life,
Great
isn't it?
example.
This is what it is, AI in life, not work, Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And we also work closely with occupational psychologist called a chap called Dexter Winters, and Dexter explains his story as a psychologist getting into AI for the first time as he was going through a really difficult time in his life, and he just put something into ChatGPT at the time, and he got something, I can't remember exactly what it was that he got back, but he felt like he'd been listened to, heard, empathized with, and therefore responded in the moment. And the fact that he felt that, it didn't really matter what the AI said or did, but he had access to something that made him feel better.
Yeah.
And and Dexter will always say that was his route into AI. And I love that story, and very similar to your story, Andy, in regards to it challenges our preconceptions of what the relationship with AI means to us. But also, if we do open our minds and accept what that could be, the democratization, the access to support our mental health or our mood or our feelings, etc., it's there. It's there for us to. And I'm not talking about trauma dumping and
Yeah.
confirmation bias and
Yeah.
self-diagnosing and the things that are
There's a caveat
not
there,
great.
isn't there?
That there's absolutely a line that we should be walking, and accessing the human intervention where the days are perhaps darker than they are lighter, for example. But that in the moment, exactly what you talked about, having the coffee, in the moment support, I just needed something there and then. I don't think there's anything better for us right now.
No, and no, I think you're absolutely right. That in the moment is key, isn't it? Because this is where the democratization. If I'd have been sitting on a bus and someone and I'd shared that story on the bus with someone I didn't know from, never knew before, and they shared the story about the tree. They know nothing about me. They know nothing about my circumstances, but they were able to provide something in the moment which was meaningful to me. So in some ways, I know this is not a person. This is a large language model chewing data, but I still think this is some of the value for me around creativity, research, well-being, which is beyond the productivity thing. This is just about using a brilliant digital tool to support me to be stronger and better at what I do. Yeah.
You've just summarized that really nicely, Andy. Just kind of, bringing all those different elements to it, different dimensions to it, and bringing it to life in a slightly different way. And I think your story will be completely unique to somebody else's story, but the skills and the purpose and the tools can be the same. And I think that's a really good message for people. I think people can take a lot from that and hopefully just go away and explore in one of those avenues, maybe in something slightly different to where we've used AI before.
Yeah. I used AI this morning to help me fix my washer dryer, my washing machine.
Yeah.
It could be something as simple as that, right?
Yeah. But it's integrated into Google now, so you'll get that advice whether you want it or not now.
Yeah,
whatever you
absolutely.
Google, won't you? It's like
Save me 85 quid for a washing machine engineer.
But I think for me, just kind of rounding things off, I think the biggest misconception is that AI replaces my thinking. No, that's not where I'm at. It's the exact opposite. What it does is it helps me ask better questions to spot where my blind spots are and to enhance my thinking and creativity. So I guess for all of us, and this is the danger where it becomes the replacement rather than that isn't how it's using for me. So for me today, coming to this wonderful podcast, it's not about replacement, it's about enhancement. And I think there are skills which underpin this, but I think it's a wonderful tool for enhancing so many areas of life, not just work.
Yeah, amen. Couldn't
Thanks,
agree
Andy.
more.
Yeah.
Wow, what a lovely conversations. Andy, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your
Thanks.
experiences and your kind of career and your reflections. And, I think that will help a lot of people in regards to
Cool.
potentially their situations as well.
Cool.
So thank you.
No worries.
Andy, if people want to learn more about what you do, the books, the work,
Yeah.
how can people reach out and find you?
Yeah, so my consultancy is called Reimagine People Development, and that's intentional. It's not Andy Lancaster Consulting. This is about rethinking how we do people development. So you can find my website, Reimagine People Development. Be delighted to connect on LinkedIn. So probably LinkedIn's the place to go. Being cheeky here. Organizational learning community.
Hold it longer,
Okay,
Andy.
okay. Organizational learning communities. This is how we do brilliant stuff with other people. So there's sections with AI. This is the first one, Driving Performance Through Learning. That's just going to second edition. So those books are available as well. But I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. And thanks, Erica and Hayley, for the chance to be on here. It's a real privilege to be on brilliant podcasts like this and just to add to the mix.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andy. Really, really appreciate your time and investment. And thank you, everybody who's watched and listened to today's episode. I hope you've taken some great stuff to reflect and think about. I know we certainly have. So we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of AI for the Average Joe. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Hayley.